and let's see if it changes. Perfect. It's working great.
And is it full screen?
Yes, it's full screen.
Okay, perfect. Great. Thank you. Sorry.
Thanks. All right, my speakers, just to inform you, it seems like the meeting has started. Okay. So we're live at the moment, even though we're 5 minutes early. Sheena is going to put on a slide. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Sheena's just going to put on a slide while we wait 5 minutes for the official kickoff time, and then we'll hand over to Sarah.
Okay, good. Yeah, it's still 5 minutes to 3.
Yeah. So speakers, though, I think everyone can hear us at the moment. So perhaps if we could just mute and we'll just we'll have a offline conversation briefly. Thanks all.
Okay. So I'm waiting for your go. Yes, Kate. So I start it then. Will Site replace him, step in? Okay. So, good day, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you might be. I'm very, very honored to facilitate this meeting of the U20, which is an initiative shared by United Cities and Local Governments and C40. I'm Sarah Höflich. I'm Assistant Secretary General of UCLG for Service Innovation. And today I'm very happy to set the stage for the discussions on a very, very critical issue, which is unlocking finance for cities. For those who work for a while in the networks, we all know how critical it is to have financing issues clear, to never plan without financing, and we will hope that today we will hear from expert on urban finance on how cities can build the financial architecture they need for sustainable, just, and resilient regions and cities. So we will have the mayor of Johannesburg, as he is a co-chair of U20, giving a welcome speech. And while we are waiting for him, I will shortly recall what this series of webinars is about. So in case for those who have not been able to join our previous webinars. So, of course, we all know that achieving the SDG and the Paris Agreement, it is not possible if cities are not involved. So we always have this figure of 60% of the SDG needing local governments for a full implementation. But to do this, we need to explore the certain aspects of public policy and empower cities with legal authority to provide service. And for providing the service, of course, they need access to financing, and not only financing from national government, but also they need reduce the dependency on transfers and have own means to organize their own financing. So currently only 40% of countries allow cities to borrow from international markets. So here we have the first bottleneck, and in many cases, the cities still require national government guarantee. So as a result, in the 2024 U20 communique, there was introduced the cities guarantee funds, and the recommendation is strengthen this in the communique of this year 2025 of U20. Professor Rodas, who gave these points in our last meetings, and he also passionately argued that we must reform the international financial system not to be national-centric, but must empower cities. So, of course, here we know we have an observatory of subnational financing. We will, of course, come to this later on, but we know this is a continuous work, and we need not only have better technical tools for cities employees to develop bankable projects, we need also to create an enabling environment to attract more private sector investment in cities, and we need to develop and improve city's technical financial capacity. So this is, of course, a lot food for thought, and it gives just a little overview on where we are. And we hope that today we have experts who will deepen these aspects. I just also would like to recall we are going to a very important milestone in the United Nations, which is the Financing for Development Conference. And just last week, we had another conference on local economic development where we made an important milestones towards this conference, where it is very, very important that cities have a stake, that cities and authorities and our local leaders are recognized, acknowledged, and of course financially not only enabled in the national system, but also in the international systems. So we will come to all this, but before I would like to give the floor to the mayor. Please, if the team could tell me if he is already connected, the executive mayor of the city of Johannesburg, Selo Enoch Data Morero. Are you ready for the welcome? I see you are. So, Mr. Mayor, floor is yours. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much. It's my video audible?
Yes, you are audible, but not visible.
Oh, you can't see me.
Now we see you.
Now you can see me.
Yeah. Just try not to move so
Okay,
we can see you.
This.
Thank you so much,
Do
Mr.
this.
Mayor.
Yes. Is it better now?
Yeah, now it's perfect.
Thank you so much. Let me take this opportunity, honorable representatives of the G20, acknowledged delegates from the National Treasury, distinguished international guests, U20 conveners and Sherpas, fellow city leaders, mayors, colleagues, and friends. Let me welcome you officially. It is a privilege to welcome you today as this third webinar in preparation for the 2025 Urban 20 Summit. Johannesburg and Tshwane are once again honored to co-chair this platform, ensuring that cities remain central to global policy discussion. Today, we turn our attention to unlocking financing for local government. I am currently elected president of the Fonds Mondial pour le Développement des Villes. I hope Carlos is excited, FMDV, a global fund for cities development. So this topic is particularly close to my heart. Cities are home to most of the world's populations and are the backbone of economic progress, driving over 80% of global GDP and fostering innovation. However, despite their economic significance, many cities, especially in the global south, face severe financial constraints and challenges. And these challenges are around borrowing, they are around limited municipal revenue streams, and growing infrastructure demands, which are placing immense pressure on urban administration and urban development. This results in the following: unfunded public services, delayed infrastructure projects, and constrained climate resilience efforts. Before we begin today's discussions, I want to extend my sincere gratitude to our esteemed panelists and respondents. Today, we are joined by leading experts in urban finance, development funding, and city-led investment strategies. Their insights will assist us as we navigate the financial challenges cities face, and explore innovation or innovative solutions needed to bridge the critical funding gaps. A special acknowledgement goes to our G20 respondents from the Sustainable Finance Working Group. Their participation highlights the benefit of direct engagement between U20 and G20, reinforcing the importance of cities being heard in global financial policy discussions. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair, for giving me this opportunity. And as U20 co-chairs Johannesburg and Tshwane, stand firm in advocating for policy and policies that empower cities to active partners in development. I trust that our conversation today will lead to tangible steps to empower our cities. Thank you once again, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor and Dr. Sela Moreno, for joining us and giving this welcome. And you, of course, you mentioned Carlos. Carlos is our next speaker, Carlos de Freitas, and he's not the only one. I just recall that we have also Barbara Samuels from the Global Clearinghouse for Development Finance, Anthony Dingham-Bon, the mayor of WUM, and Bernardo Torres in this first part. But you have making the link to Carlos de Freitas and the FMDV that you chair. And Carlos is the executive director of the FMDV, which is a global network of local and regional governments centered around financing. So he brings decades of experience in the municipal financing innovation, pioneering mechanisms that enable cities to promote investment and financing solutions to enhance urban development, including connecting cities with national and subnational development banks. And for us, for UCLG, he is a very, very important stakeholder because he is of course helping us to make our advocacy and our work on local finance. Not more now, Carlos. I hope that you take the floor. Everybody is waiting for you. Go ahead.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Let me share my screen with my presentation, and then we can begin.
Yeah, we don't see your presentation yet.
It's coming, it's coming. Wait.
Can
you see it now?
Not yet.
Okay, let's wait a few seconds. Now?
Unfortunately not.
Okay. So let me
now
stop.
Now we see.
Okay. So I stopped
Go
the
ahead.
sharing because you told me it was not working. Let me check
sorry.
No, it's okay.
It's okay. Small delay.
It takes a few seconds.
No,
anyway.
Fine.
Okay,
it's
perfect.
Okay.
Yes.
Go ahead.
So thank you so much for having us, FMDV, and yes, of course, Mayor Morero is our chair, and we are very much related to UCLG because we were created by UCLG. So this is a loop between mother and child, I guess. So before you hear the real, I think, important, provocative thought coming from Barbara as a major reference in finance, I think we just wanted to have a state of the art of what has been delivered by the different summits from the U20 in terms of finance recommendations. So I will share a very short analysis, and I think we will provide the documents to the participants, so you can afterwards go into more details. So my first part will be to analyze the U20 communiques, The second part will be about the white papers that were delivered along the process. And the third part, just commenting on the commonalities and the nuances between the different papers, the different communiques, showing some evolution also in the integration of the global advocacy coming from the international networks such as FMDV and UCLG and C40 in the content. So first part, I will go quickly on that part because it's mainly what you will always know about the general advocacy on finance for local governments, local and regional governments. The first part is the global financial architecture and direct city access to climate finance. So this was a strong recommendation present in several communiques. The direct access to international climate finance and the reform of the multilateral development banks is very much present in the different summits. Basically, it's calling for an enhanced direct municipal access to climate funds, including the loss and damage fund. And we know since COP28 in Dubai that this is integrated now in the framing of the use of the fund, not yet in the operational proceedings of disbursing the funds, but we'll see what happens in the coming month and years, I guess. And of course, urging the reform of the multilateral development banks to better address the urban needs. So this is something that you will find again later on. The systemic urban climate finance frameworks, a recommendation to create a systemic financial architecture at the national and or regional level, specifically tailored to support city-led climate action. The second component is about fiscal decentralization and strengthening local financial capacities. You will find the enhanced fiscal autonomy and decentralization very much present as the basis of the advocacy for asking for stronger fiscal decentralization, improved local fiscal autonomy, of course, and more predictable intergovernmental fiscal transfers. The second part, which is, I think, the most important one, which is capacity building and technical assistance, emphasizing the necessity of technical assistance and capacity building for local governments to manage financial resources effectively and enhance creditworthiness. The third component, leveraging private capital and innovative financing instruments. So proposing somehow a broader use of green and sustainability bonds, highlighting challenges for cities in the global south with the ESG compliance and the whole process of accessing this kind of funding. And you said it, Sarah, at the very beginning, the access to capital markets is very complex for global south cities. The second part, of course, for these kind of instruments is the blended finance and the risk mitigation mechanisms, calling for the creation of an enhancement of city guarantee funds, blended finance instruments, and credit enhancement mechanisms to attract private capital towards urban infrastructure. And you know how complex it is for cities to get there. Integrated economic stimulus and inclusive recovery instruments. About these integrated urban investment strategies, the recommendations come with the demand for more inclusion of green and equitable urban investments in economic stimulus and recovery packages. Of course, it was especially post-COVID-19 crisis, and emphasizing a just transition for all the population, and especially the most vulnerable ones. The white papers are, of course, going deeper than the communiques, because the communiques are just the formulation as a summary of all the demands. And I just want to highlight the fact that if you go to the U20 website, you will find all these white papers available. And my review went from the sectorial review of the papers and the thematic review. So you will find several documents on affordable housing from the Buenos Aires, Riyadh, and Jakarta summits, basically providing the solutions in terms of mechanisms such as PPPs, to leverage private capital, land value capture, fiscal incentives, municipal guarantees, inclusive financial instruments that are really tailored to target lower and middle income households. So you will find a lot of references there. On urban mobility and sustainable infrastructure, again, in the same summits, you will find a lot of papers going into details on how you can build some strategies for financing mobility and infrastructure. On local fiscal autonomy and decentralization, the mechanisms and instruments are the ones we know: stable intergovernmental fiscal transfers, enhanced own source revenue through mechanisms such as land value capture, user fees for urban services, and improved local fiscal autonomy via the national fiscal reforms. And in terms of technical assistance and capacity building, the recommendation are for structured technical assistance, capacity building programs, and strengthen institutional frameworks to support local governments in managing finances. On climate finance and urban resilience, the topic has grown in the different papers. Of course, the role of subnational development banks and intermediaries were emphasized explicitly, especially from 2023 on, advocating for strengthening domestic financial intermediaries. Subnational development banks, green banks were also another example. Subnational pooled financing mechanisms, which basically pool the small projects to get higher value for the total of the projects, for the ticket size. You know, that's a very important criteria for donors and private capital. Channel all those intermediaries, of course, to channel funds to cities efficiently and enhance the okay. Sorry, I need to close. But mechanisms and instruments, direct intermediate access to international climate finance mechanisms, and of course, the establishment of systemic urban climate finance ecosystem at the national level, which is something that is aligned with the recommendations at the global level. For biodiversity, basically the same kind of instruments. So I'll go very quickly to the common convergence on key orientations. You have here the projection of what is really the basis for our advocacy. I'd like to go to the nuances. So the explicit recognition of subnational development banks, which is a very notable progression clearly from 2023 on, and we will see what we get in the financing for development outcome document. Climate risk insurance and financial resilience instruments. This comes from the Accelerating Climate Finance paper. This marked a significant expansion in the financial toolkit recommended for urban climate adaptation. Transition finance, of course, is a very key component because just transition is a very complex component of the planning for financing local governments projects. The emphasis also on nature-based solutions, you hear more and more since the early 20s, this formula and the biodiversity and nature-based urban solutions are very key now in replacing gray infrastructure. So you will find a lot of references to specific initiatives and tools in different U20 cities. And of course, the climate finance architecture at national levels. And you know that we are now in the revision process of the nationally determined contributions at the country level, and we need to have the cities and the financing cities topic more present in those documents to ensure that we can provide more funding to the cities globally. I will leave now the place
Yeah.
to
So sorry, Carlos,
Barbara.
we have, but thank you for being short because, of course, of the time. And you showed a lot of instruments. I think several of them will be touched later on, like from the mayor of BUM. But of course, now we are very, very excited to hear from Barbara Samuels. She is, maybe first, let me say, the Global Clearinghouse she is leading is a is a non-profit organization and provides independent expert support to facilitate the development of pipelines of bankable investment to achieve the sustainable development goals and climate goals. So aligned with requirements of financiers. So she has over 30 years of experience, and she is also a very, very important expert for us, for UCLG. So we are very grateful you accompany us in all these processes. And of course, Barbara is not only also developing specific strategies, she also has been with the World Economic Forum. She has provided a recommendation to UN, to official sector in developing countries. So Barbara, I think your CV is very amazing, but let's keep it here because now we really want to come to your input. Barbara, the floor is yours for the keynote. We don't hear you. Try again.
Yeah.
Now.
Okay.
Now.
Yes. Is that okay now?
You are fine, Barbara. Go ahead.
Okay. And can you see my screen?
No, we see your face. Sharing not yet.
Did it happen?
Yes.
Now it's fine.
Okay. Hallelujah. It is overwhelming to be here and very exciting. And Carlos, I thank you for putting forward the concepts that are fundamental to actually getting results. I must note, though, that in the FFD process in Spain, if you remember, for the first time in Addis Ababa in 2015, we got local governments in that text via the UN FFD Business Steering Committee, putting UCLG on our business committee and working with governments behind the scene. So I think also within the FFD process, there's been real progress. This presentation, though, is very much on the house is on fire. What do we do? So this is not about the long-term reforms, fiscal autonomy, or any of those subjects. What I was asked to be provocative, and I think we have to realize how bad the situation is, and what are our tools today to get results, not just in the large cities, but across local governments and in countries that are not investment grade. We have to go for big bang. We've got to get it done. So this presentation, I'll go quickly, has 4 sections. One is, we have to look at reality. What is the financing gaps? And if we detail the statistics on what are the sources of finance and the instruments, what does that tell us about what our solutions are? 2, we have to look at what I will call the valley of death, the difference between our needs and what we can access, and why is it that we have such failures. 3, what are the solutions? Go through 3 key challenges for local governments, and what are the quick solutions, not long-term, but what do we know based on reality and evidence and what we can do, and then lastly, implications. So if we go, the first thing, what is the reality today? What are the sources of finance? If you look at the annual CPI, climate finance statistics, we have a gap between 4 trillion a year, that's a UN FFD number, to the CPI number of 6.1 trillion. It's huge. Now, what sometimes we don't recognize is that private sector finance, climate finance, is more than public sector. And if we look at the components of private sector finance, it is commercial banks, corporations, and households, user fees. This is the bulk of the money that is today in the market. If we look, on the other hand, at the public sector, where is most of the money coming from? From national governments. This is very important. So, and where in national governments, from the national development finance institutions, the governments themselves, and state-owned enterprises. Only 17% is coming from multilateral development finance institutions and multilateral climate funds. Only 0.5% comes from the multilateral climate funds. And against that scary lack of finance, we have the IMF and the UNFCCC telling us if we forecast forward and we meet the climate finance needs we have to meet, we have to get 70 to 90% from the private sector because the money just isn't available in the public sector. So we have to face that harsh reality. If we look at the instruments, what are the instruments that are now being used? And what does that tell us? What is fascinating is you look at the 1.3 trillion that CPI reports as an average between 2001 and 2002. 54% of total climate finance was on a project basis. Projects that were being developed. And of that, 44% is at market rate. Concessional finance, we talk about it all the time. Only 6% low cost debt, 4% equity. If we look at established entities, 38%, most of it is equity. Only 10% is balance sheet, meaning that loans are made based on a financial analysis of the assets and liabilities of the entity, and only 6% grants. So, well, how does that inform us? I think we need to understand that projects are getting money, and that's good because we can make projects, okay? That's just financial engineering. We can do that. And there's a lot of talk about blended finance, but the fact is there's not a lot of money in the public sector to blend with. There's only 12%. So we have to think of the bigger picture. How do we just mobilize finance? So if we go to the second part here, and we say, okay, let's confront this really scary thing, the valley of death in the global market. We're only meeting, based on the CPI data, 18% of what we need to be able to deliver. Only 18%. And of that 18%, you look at where it's going, 83% in Asia, Western Europe, US, and Canada. Only 4% in Latin America and the Caribbean, only 3% in South Asia, only 3% in Central Asia and Eastern Europe, and only 3% in Sub-Saharan Africa. That's frightful. And that is despite the fact, as Carlos was going through all these great agreements, we have a lot of stuff on paper. In fact, starting with the Monterey Consensus in 2002, we have these words: innovative finance, enabling environments, risk mitigation, pooled finance. It's all there, but we are failing to meet the investment requirements. We're very good in advocacy and getting agreement and concept, but we have a failure, a general systemic failure in implementation. If we think to ourselves, well, what are these finance preconditions that we can't meet? And there's a convergence. It's very much the same between the public and the private sector. The first problem is ticket sizes. How much is the cost of the project or the investment? Given high transaction costs, a lot of financial institutions, including like the European Investment Bank and the World Bank, they want to see a project much bigger than 20 million. A lot, that's like if they won't even talk to you if you're less. And public and private sector entities, financiers, they want to know that the operation is viable over the longer term, that you have a demonstrated ability to pay debt service, interest and principal, if it's equity, to deliver the expected returns. And we all know the shorthand to proving you're credit worthy is getting a credit rating that says you're investment grade. Very hard if you're in a country that's not investment grade. And now increasingly the private sector as well as the public sector, they want to know you're going to deliver impact, climate, job creation, and you have to provide data and evidence. So those finance preconditions, we have to really face the fact they're universal. There is a convergence. If you're going to do a water investment, you want the people that are supposed to get good water and you want that service to continue. So there's a convergence here, but we're failing. And this valley of death, of course, is even worse for local governments than it is for the bigger picture. And you think about it like the architecture, you have, according to the OECD Observatory on Subnational Finance, over 500,000 local governments, each requiring finance. And we know systemically, as Sarah explained, we don't have enough intragovernmental fiscal transfers. We don't have enough own source revenue, property taxes, or whatever. And of course, we don't have enough expertise, but we have all this fragmentation. And again, we've done really well at advocacy. What are the solutions? So if we ask ourselves, given the focus on large ticket sizes, creditworthiness, impact, how do we get this done today? The house is on fire. Well, I will put forward 3 key challenges with specific solutions that are immediately available to us. Okay. So the first solution is to look at the fragmentation and think economies of scale, bargaining power, aggregation. The fact is, local government should have the biggest bargaining power ever because being on the front line with citizens, being there, increasingly so even with climate disasters, this is an incredible narrative. And when you think about it, all finance is subnational. Even, the capital city is subnational. Everything is subnational. So there's an issue here about realizing the narrative and the bargaining power. So in terms of actions, what does that mean? It means a mind shift. Maybe think not about your projects in isolation. You're smaller. If you're in a big, if you're in Johannesburg, you have a different possibility than most other cities. Aggregation. Put together projects with other local governments. Work with your local government association to get that synergies. Campaign for national inclusion. There is no logical reason that national programs in energy and water and climate would not include some national entities, and these are silos that handicap everyone. So it means thinking again, mind changing. Who are your partners? Your partners are your peers. Your partners are the national government, their development partners, or the private sector. And think very concretely about how to advocate for partnering with others in developing specific co-create proposals and meet finance requirements. So does this work? Yes. And here, um, uh, we need to think about the role of the national government because the national government, as Sarah said with the professor, that is the international development architecture and the international financial structure. So we need to be pragmatic, look at how governments can fit in. Each country has different opportunities and constraints, and think about the systemic functions of national governments as aggregators, bridges, and enablers. They can help with project aggregation. Cameroon, there's a municipal, I think it's $250 million World Bank project. Are local governments really involved in that program? And could it be better? We always talk about the enabling environment. Sarah again talked about the lack of ability to borrow. All those things come from the national government as well as supplemented with local regulations. The ministries of finance are the gateways. They have to approve so many things. So, and our ability to leverage really happens there, bringing in the private sector too. So I think pragmatically, we have to look at the role of national governments. Now, is this real? Can we really have an impact thinking aggregation? And I have to thank FMDV and the French government here, because this first example I learned when they asked me to put together the launch of the subnational pooled finance report in Addis in 2015. And when we did the work, we found that local government agencies in Europe and the US had mobilized over $1 trillion through local government agencies for projects. And when we looked at developing countries, we found 2.6 billion. And this is, we can call it innovative, but the first subnational pooled finance mechanism was in 1898. Very interesting. Why aren't we doing more of that? The Hollywood transaction for this was Tamil Nadu. It was over $250 million in local currency bonds that were bought up by Indian pension funds. A lot of investment, dare I say, from USAID, World Bank, KfW. There was a recent water bond launched in Tanzania, set up through a newly created Tanzania National Municipal Task Force, which involved the Tanzania Stock Exchange and the central bank, with support from the head of state. These things can be done. Why aren't we doing more of them? Solar public lights, very interesting. The Minister of Finance in Senegal got lights through a negotiation with the French government, supported with funding from the French government, for municipalities throughout. Aggregation. This can make immediate impact. Second challenge, we all talk about it, lack of finance creditworthiness of local governments. I'll be dead before we solve this. Okay, what do we do today? Okay, if we look back and we say, what entities are really implementing water, sanitation, building efficiency, renewable projects, energy projects on the ground? It's really a very large group. It's not just local governments, but first and foremost, utilities, worldwide utilities, SMEs, PPPs, energy saving companies, community service organizations. So I think, again, it's a mindset. We have to think when we talk about local governments need to make sure these things happen, but it may be a facilitation role rather than owning a project on the balance sheet. Also, we need to think, as we did a few seconds ago, about what are the finance sources. We can take earmark sources from intergovernmental transfers or own source revenues, but we can go to banks, we can issue bonds, we can have all sorts of structures, and there can be a blending of user payments, which may not pay all your costs with other sources. So we have to think larger about this. And critically, the third thing, Carlos referred a lot to the concepts, but put them into place. Special purpose vehicles, off balance sheet. It means you're getting a loan based on your projected cash flows, not because you have 3 years of profitability. Maybe you're a new project, but you can showing your cash flows, your financial projections, supplemented with all your good work, that you're going to be credit worthy. So we need to change our minds and think today you don't have to have a credit rating as a city or a province or even a village to be able to get money. Okay, so again, how do we test this? Utilities worldwide, they're all over the place. It's a proven way to use techniques. You set up special purpose vehicles, again, proven, blended finance, pooled finance, all this stuff, offtake agreements, where you get the user of the service to provide the payments into a lockbox, and that is used for debt service. So there's many instruments that have proved successful, that are mainstream in terms of being proven and accepted by banks, the rating agencies, the bond market, everything that we don't use. Also important are intermediaries for local governments. Very important. We can, and Carlos, you referred to it, subnational development banks. National development banks can channel. So, and we have examples of this, which I think we should really sit back. How did Empresas Pública de Medellín in Colombia, Medellín, the city of Medellín, in 1954, when it was known for drug cartels, set up EPM, and it is one of the most successful, totally city-owned companies delivering water. I mean, these things, Sabesp in Sao Paulo, largest state-owned company in the world, $12 billion listed on the New York Stock Exchange. We have lots of great inspiration if we think about it. Guarantees are important. You have this port in Nigeria issued 3 20-year bonds with 100% guarantee with this mechanism, Nigeria's InfraCredit. We have a housing project in Kenya where there was a partial credit guarantee coupled with some grant assistance from the PIDGE, and that was rated better than the sovereign rating of Kenya and could mobilize funding. In Brazil, intermediation. We have the regional bank of the extreme south that was able to borrow 125 million with a guarantee from the Ministry of Finance for 547 municipalities. So there are ways today we can do things. But it's complex. I just wanted to show you, this is Tamil Nadu. And this is scary. It took 11 years to get this set up, from the different local governments coming together, bringing their projects, setting up the management company. But that's because it hadn't been done before. Third challenge, last challenge we'll address. And that again is what we talk about it every day. Local governments have limited access to experts. So the solution is to secure them. But the first thing is mindset change. In order to do projects, you need to have deal teams. It isn't just hiring one consultant or getting one project preparation facility. You're going to end up in the valley of death. It doesn't work. You got to be able to have specialized experts that know how to do transactions. You need lawyers that can negotiate with the banks or the providers of risk mitigation. You got to really understand the optimal way to deliver on climate and development. And you need to be able to produce evidence to your targeted financiers. You got to have financial models. You got to be able to show the reduction in carbon emissions. You have to have business plans. You got to get business government approvals. So it's a whole different enchilada. So this is where the actions are, again, these are related. You need the aggregation, powers and numbers. You need to be able to come together and work with the national government using your subnational power, get integrated into budgets and capital allocation. And Carlos knows I'm going to say this because we've been pushing this together for a long time. Financial hubs, putting together, we do not have the specialized experts to be able to do these kinds of deals. And we need to advocate for it together at all different levels. And so why is this true? Well, you look at any of these deals, and there's any deal you look at that gets done, there are real specialized experts behind it. And there's an opportunity here.
May I remind on time, Barbara?
Okay, I'm finishing up. There's an opportunity here at the spring 2024 World Bank Spring meeting. The heads of the NDBs issued a document they called Viewpoint. And they said, we have to address how to work together better. And the way we do it is through country-led platforms. This is an opportunity for subnationals to be in that. So if you think about how this would look, you bring together the subnational with the bankability, the expertise, and the concessional. So to close out, what are the implications? We have to push ourselves to go from words, commitments, papers, to traverse the valley of death and get to the other side and really seize on these actions. So for local governments, got to work together. You got to think bigger about how to get things done. National governments, you got to realize all finance is subnational and you got to integrate it. Development partners, you got to support this. And this is where we need help with more funding for experts, credit enhancements, and the like. Everybody needs to be able to say these specialized techniques, we've got to put them forward. We have to really put meaningful finance hubs that are accessible to local governments, and we have to train the armies of local experts. We don't have enough experts out there. There's a training function, and we got to have performance metrics. Sorry for going over. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Barbara, and for crossing the valley of death. It makes me drink water. And actually, I want to make a small note because I saw the word water is appearing quite a lot in your presentation. And of course, why? Because here in water is one of the I think the guarantee, as you say, no? So how do we measure a city? If a city is able to collect fees, and water is one perfect example to show a muscle of a city, so it can collect fees. But definitely, I think that narrative, and we here call today unlocking financing for cities, but also we are confronted by the narrative unlocking financing from cities. So that point that in particular also international actors look very much, please collect more fees, make more revenue, land use fees. So they expect cities performing like Joburg, raising enormous income. But this is very difficult if you don't have the services that people feel they can respond to. So this trap, national and local government, is very important, not only in accountability on the services, but also, of course, that all the services or how we collect fees. So this dependence on national government funding, as you say, that is most of the money, is definitely very, very critical to look for. And thank you very much. You recalled a lot the FMDV examples, and we have an award. I need to mention that because Carlos maybe can share this in the chat. The award has a lot of information collected. I've been honored to be part of the jury, and I think all the examples, it is a continuous evolution of knowledge, as it is with the WOFI, the World Observatory of Local Finance. We do together with the OECD. So it's a UCLG and OECD initiative. And in this initiative, we confirm your 3%, which showed poor countries have very empowerish the cities because they give very, very little transfer. So cities have no financial muscle. And here, in particular, the smaller cities, because if you look, for example, Mozambique, where we have a very low fiscal autonomy, here the small cities, they don't have funding for services, so they cannot provide services. So central government steps in, is the service provider. So the trap, the vicious cycle is getting up because they cannot collect fees. So I think the valley of death has a lot of small sandstorms inside. We need to cover. But this brings me to our next speakers, because I think Anthony is really the perfect person to give us this example from African and smaller cities and how they fight despite all the difficulties we have heard, and I only can confirm from Barbara. So Anthony Dingabom is the mayor of Bom in Cameroon, and he's also the president of the United Cities and Councils of Cameroon, the UCCC. So here, I think this is an example of that what Barbara just said, that aggregation is not only national government's role, it is also a role of the associations which we represent. And he will, Anthony will provide an excellent example on how national architecture can be structured to facilitate local development. So the floor is yours, and really happy to see you again. We saw in Seville also in this Seville 1, in this gathering for getting ready for the conference Financing for Development. Anthony, the floor is yours. Anthony? I don't hear you.
He's on mute.
Please unmute. We cannot hear you. You should unmute. We do not hear you, Anthony. We can't hear you. Maybe somebody from the host can unmute him. Anthony, we don't hear you. I'm sorry. So, Anthony, we can, I don't hear him. I think nobody hears him, no? So, Anthony, I would say try to resolve your issue. It's about the sound. While we go to the next speaker and you come and we come back to you, would this be a solution? We have Bernardo.
For me, it's perfect.
Maybe.
Okay, so
Yeah,
maybe
maybe
you
Mayor,
can.
Sorry, Sarah. Maybe Mayor, you can reconnect with your cell phone. I think it will work better, and you can speak after Bernardo. Indeed. Sorry,
Mayor
Sarah.
Anthony, we will give you the floor in 5 minutes. So hopefully you can get your issues resolved. And I introduce Bernardo. Bernardo, it's a pleasure to have you here with us. You are representing Sao Paulo, a city and a region that is, of course, admired. You have extreme experiences and front projects for financing, and you will now give us an insight how Latin American cities are so successfully navigating urban finance and technical barriers through strategic policies and institutional reforms. So you say you are ready, so take your 5 minutes and let us know this experience.
Oh, perfect. Thank you very much, Sarah. Good morning, good afternoon, and even good evening to everyone joining from different cities around the world. It is an honor to represent the city of São Paulo today in this important webinar on unlocking finance for cities, a key topic, especially within the Urban 20 framework. Last year, São Paulo co-chaired this crucial platform for dialogue among cities. We know it is a challenging mission, but one that brings valuable experience and rewarding outcomes. I would like to take this opportunity to congratulate the cities of Johannesburg and Schwein for their leadership this year under the guidance of His Excellency the Mayor, through whom I greet all other authorities present today. My special thanks to the Urban 20 team and also to the FMDV staff, particularly to Carlos de Freitas and Gabriela Costa for the invitation and for the long-standing and impactful partnership with the city of São Paulo. So, starting with a general overview of the finance for cities, I want to highlight that the need to mobilize innovative and long-term solutions for urban financing has never been more urgent. I consistently emphasize in every possible forum that challenges manifest themselves in the streets, neighborhoods, and corners. Among all levels of government, cities uniquely positioned to understand the concrete and immediate needs of their populations. While the state governments hold a more aggregated view of municipal challenges, the federal level often engages with broader agendas and dynamics associated with high politics, security, the tariffary, and other stuff. But cities, especially in the global south, are facing crazily complex challenges. Regardless of how creative local administrations can be, these challenges demand substantial financial resources. You can have ideas, but you need money. You need investment. So, however, when seeking financing, cities face well-known challenges, varying by size and local capacities, which become even more apparent when aiming for international funding. Sorry. You want me to finish the presentation?
Yeah, please, Bernardo, end your presentation and we go to Anthony.
Oh, perfect, Sarah.
Mayor Anthony, we come to you in 2 minutes.
No, perfect. So, despite these constraints, local governments remain primarily responsible for public infrastructure, essential service, and ensuring the population's quality of life. So we don't have the federal investments, sometimes even the state investments, but the city needs to solve the problems of the population. So just for example, what São Paulo did, that it's helping the city today to go international on searching for financing. São Paulo, having mapped Brazil's domestic bureaucracies related to international mobilization of financial resources, particularly through departments such as finance and planning, the city of São Paulo, through its International Affairs Office, launched an initiative that, based on our research, appears to be unprecedented among other cities. The development of a strategic international institutional relations project focused on engaging multilateral development banks, the MDBs, public and regional development banks, the PDBs, the subnational banks, the SDBs, private financial institutions, and other international funding agencies. This engagement has been carried out systematically since 2023, and I have the honor of designing and leading this effort over the past 2 years. Among the actions of this project is São Paulo participation in key international financing events, where city-level presence is often minimal. So I would highlight, for example, our participation in the FIX Summit of 2023 in Cartagena, Colombia, in the FIX Summit of 2025 in Cape Town, South Africa, in the FIX G20 joint event in 2004, among others. Under the G20 framework, our International Institutional Office has taken part in several agendas, particularly those of the engagement groups, both 2024 and also 2025, with more robust participation during Brazil's presidency of the group. But in parallel, Brazil is also presiding over BRICS these years. And the city of São Paulo has already been working closely with the bloc, having even raised the importance of the participation and the need to streamline international finance procedures. As a result of this strategic approach, we have held meetings with a wide range of international banks and funding agencies, and we currently have projects underway, especially in the areas of food security and sustainable development. This represents a clear example of SDG 17, Partnerships for the Goals, by using institutional relations as a tool to improve the quality of life for São Paulo residents. Another key institutional initiative led by our multilateral affairs team under the leadership of Vitória Volpato is the pursuit of international awards that recognize the quality of our projects and public policies, enhancing their visibility and making them more attractive to international investors. By pursuit of international finance with recognition through awards for our public policies, all with the goal of better serving the population and promoting example led by our Secretary of Finance. I would like to highlight actually an outstanding example of this project, the electric bus program. Just yesterday, I had the honor to present this initiative to the UNDP. A key aspect of the project was the financial architecture supporting the program. The city adopted a partial subsidy model to facilitate the access to financing for the private operators responsible for acquiring and managing the electric fleet. This innovative project successfully secured international funding, won an award from FMDV, and has been improving the quality of life in our city. To the soccer fans, it's a real hat trick. So, by the short time that I have today, I would like to thank you all once again for the opportunity to share this experience. And I'm pleased to leave my email and LinkedIn below, as I remain fully available for any collaboration that I, together with the City of São Paulo, can contribute to moving this agenda forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bernardo, also for keeping the time. And I will be a little bit more strict with all coming now, because if not, my colleague Luis from C40 will not have time. It would be a pity. But I know your project. We have been reviewing it, and we all liked it a lot. It's really very, very amazing. So we recommend this for further reading by the participants. And now we go finally to Mayor Dikambong. You have already been introduced, and please make use of your time now. It is exactly, or maybe 5 minutes, or maximum.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we do. Yes.
Oh, okay, great. Thank you, and thank the past speakers, honorable mayors, Urban 20 conveners and partners, fellow local leaders, distinguished participants. It's once more my pleasure to be amongst you. Actually, as I said, the introduction, I am actually the first national vice president of the United Councils and Cities of Cameroon. And in our association, we are 374 cities. Out of the 364 cities, we have, given the situation of financing and the challenges that we face, we further decentralize our structures to regional and divisional structures. So councils have come together at the level of the region, come together at the level of divisions. At the level of the divisions, the minimum number of councils are 3, just in one of the divisions, and the maximum it's in one of them, where we have about 17 councils put together. So most often the regions are the ones that will relate directly with them, and then they relate with the divisions. So it's an institution that we are trying to make sure, because of the laws in Cameroon that say that councils can have council unions, where in case of challenges of financing and so on, carry out projects, they can come together and see how to source for financing as a group, as a team. So I want to say that we are actually meeting a pivotal moment, the G20 summit, soon to be hosted by South Africa. I was very pleased when the mayor of Joburg was speaking to us, welcoming us. It was a wonderful opportunity listening to him. The very first African G20 and the UN Financing for Development Conference, FFD4, in Seville, Spain, offer an aligned opportunity to shift the conversation from recognition to action, from recommendations to reform. We know the facts. Cities generate 70% of global GDP, yet receive only 2 to 4% in national transfers. I want to cite the example of Cameroon. For example, the law in Cameroon says that councils shall have at least 15% of the state budget. But as of today, we have just a little bit above 5%. This law was enacted since 2019. We are hoping that things will evolve so that we can be able to have those opportunities. It is a fracture in trust. We have a lot of bottleneck to progress, and a silent emergency for millions of urban residents who are still waiting for basic services to source or secure livelihoods and resilient futures. In this context, Africa's cities, and particularly our secondary cities, are rising fast, but with their hands very, very tight, like I just said in the beginning. I will echo Barbara Samuel's presentation. In fact, her presentation was very amazing. And I start first with a message that we must reach G20 shepherds and ministers of finance. Local governments are not beneficiaries. We are co-investors, co-designers, and strategic partners in development. At UCC, for example, we are working to shift the identity of local leaders. Our mayors are becoming market makers, solution providers, and trust builders. I can cite you some examples of the trust builders. We today have the village development committees that in carrying out projects, you have to make sure that these villagers become interested. For example, to have your session, a council session, is obliged that you have to invite the president, we call them president of professional groups. For example, the buy and sell arms, the bike riders, the carpenters union, the bricklayers union, you name the rest. You invite them to come and share so that they are actively involved in the management of the city, and they get an interest in seeing how they can support you manage the city. Because previously, they thought the management of the city was that of the mayor, was that of the councillors, and a few individuals. So today they are involved and they make sure that they actively participate, and that facilitates even collection of taxes as well as development within the municipalities. We cannot deliver on these roles without a fit for purpose financial ecosystem. That's why alongside global partners like FMDV and UCLG and supported by the European Union and the French Agency for Ecological Transition, ADEMI, we are proposing country platform for localizing finance, a bottom-up system mechanism for coordinated national local planning and financing. This platform shall, for example, be rooted on a national strategy for localizing finance with a multi-stakeholder governance and coordination. It activates local fine hubs, which are financial engineering units dedicated to support project preparation and investment readiness alongside local government administration. Empower cities to build investable entities such as municipal SPVs. We have systems that we can today, for example, the system for waste management, there's a system for transformation of waste and whatever. And position sub-national development banks, like I quoted in Seville, the FECOM, which has to be the interface between the national governments who are now ready to bring in and then the local governments that they can guarantee funding and they can guarantee loaning of these local regional governments. We equally have, let me be clear, this is not a theory, it's an African solution, which is in motion that we are expecting that it will be put in motion. I will take Cameroon as an example of what can be achieved following this vision. We developed a framework of productive cities. It is based on one principle. Territorial wealth exists if we know how to unlock it. To make it wise, we are conducting value chain diagnostic at municipal level, creating municipal investment companies to crowd in capital, promoting territorial marketing to attract aligned investors, and building local networks for the social and solidarity economy to ensure no one is left behind. We are equally to turn to this into a marketplace. We have created JCOM, the Council International Economic Forum, whereby we invite investors, we invite partners to come in and exchange with us. We have held 2 editions, 2021 and 2023. This year we are holding the 3rd one, which is supposed to be from the 2nd to the 4th of June, 2023. In the first one, we had over 20,000 participants with 23 countries that were present in Cameroon, and over 230 companies and investors engaged with Cameroon cities and councils. JCOM 2025 will take place, as I just said, and we are inviting all urban 20 cities and partners to join us, because this is the kind of horizontal dialogue and concrete match making our continent needs. Let me now speak on what I believe should be a cornerstone of G20 reform on urban finance: the recognition and support of subnational development banks. Yeah, I was just giving some example because in the middle and low income countries, only 20% of major cities are credit worthy, as we have already heard. Over 40% of city projects shall fall below $5,000, $500,000, far from donors and private investors' minimum financing thresholds. We have all heard this. So institutions like FECOM act as aggregates of fragmented local projects, de-riskers in uncertain markets, and catalysts of trust between cities and capital. Cameroon's innovation does not stand alone. FECOM chairs the African Alliance of Sub-National Development Bank, now with over 40 members. So it's a good opportunity for us, and we are working to make these banks more visible in the global financial architecture, following our previous wins and aiming at this year's G20 and FFD4. Colleagues, under 20 process must not be just about showcasing what cities can do. It must be about demanding what global system must become. We need, for example, fair access to capital markets and debt opportunities, scale fiscal transfers with autonomy, global targets for national investment, and a place for local governments and SDBs in the governance of climate and development funds. To end, let the G20 know cities don't just need finance, they unlock it, but only if the system recognizes them as full players. The FFD conference in Seville in just 90 days will be a milestone, but let the G20 be the launch pad. Let the U20 movement be a bridge between grassroots leaders and global institutions, between local ingenuity and system reform, between what we know works and what must now be scaled. Africa's urban future is not an emergency to manage. It is transformative opportunity to lead. Let us seize it together, and together we shall move. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mayor Anthony. I think you say it's emotion, you transmit this emotion. Despite that at least in my screen, I see really scattered pictures because of the internet connection, but it's so amazing. Yeah. I can imagine how much trust you build in all these partners that come and join your initiative. It's like a magnetism. So congratulations for this work, and of course, pride from the municipal movement to you. So now let's go for some responses. We have a response of U20 and one response of G20. And the first response will be given by Montreal. So we have Esteban Benavides. I understand you are here with us, and you will give a short response to what you've heard on behalf of U20. Esteban, yeah, there you are. Please.
Yes. Thank you very much. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we do.
Yes. Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. And thank you very much for the invitation. And I'm very happy to participate to this U20 webinar in this important topic. It was very interesting to hear from all the panelists. And I'm very honored to provide my perspective as a responding of our U20 city. In this case, it will be a perspective from a city from the north. Actually, it's important to know that cities finance is a common challenge for cities in all regions. In the Canadian context, for example, the main source of city revenues comes from land and property taxes, but actually that's not enough. And that means that for a metropolis like Montreal, for example, the financing system doesn't take into account the size of the population or the economic activity or other factors that could increase its budget. So as you know well, cities provide local public services, but they actually do so much more. And they are in the front lines of many growing challenges, such as maintaining aging infrastructure, housing, social inequalities, climate change, which puts cities' finance under stress. So how to respond to these challenges within a financial system that is no longer adapted to the challenges of our time? I actually like to highlight 3 key ideas from that were mentioned during the panel today. The first one is empowerment, because cities know that they must take proactive steps to increase its financial autonomy and increase their bargaining power, either by engaging with national governments, by mobilizing with other cities, or by developing its own internal capacities. In this sense, the experience of Cameroon and Sao Paulo are very good examples. Here in Montreal, in 2022, the city of Montreal organized a general summit on Montreal taxation, where the city gathered many stakeholders and created a task force with other municipalities around in order to reflect together on how to diversify city revenues and bring concrete recommendations to the provincial government. The other key point is the active engagement with national government, because all the financial system is built around national government. And as Dr. Damo said, lobbying national government is essential to incite that changes are put into motion. And national governments are also necessary partners, and that can also contribute to ensure an adequate environment to access funding from other sources. In this case, the experience of Cameroon is a very good example on how national environment was structured to facilitate local development. By the way, we have a similar example here in Canada, where the Association of Canadian Municipalities created a green municipal fund that helped fund local initiatives related to climate change and resilience. And the last idea is about innovation, because U20 discussion like this one must help to develop and promote innovating financing solutions tailored for cities' needs, such as the one from the city of Sao Paulo. And that recall as well that another key aspect of the discussions within the U20, which are the direct access to international funding for cities, for example, for climate funds. So in conclusion, reform is essential to ensure citizens receive the necessary financial flows to build a healthier and more sustainable and prosperous world. And as a coalition of U20 cities, we must continue to advocate globally to create financial mechanisms which are inclusive for cities, as well as for direct international funding for cities, particularly in developing countries. And we also need to focus on the implementations of locally adapted solutions.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Bernardo. Esteban, sorry. This was very clear and, of course, appreciated. I think, of course, here reminding the U20, also the cities of the North, and in the end, so many points that touch. So now we have another contribution from the G20. So we have Sandra Seck-Gedle. She's part of the working group on the sustainable finance, and she will also give us a feedback on what you just heard. So Sandra, floor is yours for 5 minutes. And I just want to announce Luis, who will now later take up the questions and answers. We have received from the chat several inputs and questions and answers to the speakers. In case you want more to comment more, do this now, because in 5 minutes we will go to this last segment. Sandra, the floor is yours. Thank you so much for being with us. And Kolizang, so it's both of you.
Okay. No, thanks, Sarah. So I will give my response based on the South African experience. So just to indicate also that is not necessarily of what was presented today, but the topic itself or the theme for today's webinar. So as we all know that South Africa has 3 spheres of government: the national sphere, province, and the local government. And I understand that other countries have different arrangement, like your tiers, which are most often above one another, and also are mostly centralized as compared to our decentralized system. So in South Africa, local government have been given the authority to provide basic services and to provide infrastructure. and they are also given responsibility for the overall economic development. So legislation gives full details of the powers and functions that municipalities have, and these are not the same across different categories of municipalities. And cities have more authority to provide more services as compared to smaller municipalities. So our theme today is unlocking finance for cities. And so with the focus of infrastructure, obviously we know that infrastructure can be financed or funded from different sources, like your grants from national or provincial governments. It can also be funded by borrowing, but also by own revenue. So municipalities in South Africa are allowed to raise their own revenue and to invest in infrastructure. And this is supported by several pieces of legislation. Firstly, it's supported by the Constitution, which allows municipalities to secure loan and make some investment. And is also supported by the white paper on local government, which emphasizes that the private sector has a role to play in the financing and the development of infrastructure. Also by the Municipal Financial Management Act, the MFMA, which articulates the process that municipalities need to follow to secure loans. So lastly, we have the updated Municipal Borrowing Policy Framework, which was recently adopted by Cabinet in 2022. And the framework just set out the principles on how municipalities should engage with the market in order to expand the scope of borrowing and also to create an environment that attracts more players in the market. So what is important or to note about this borrowing policy is that it now allows the international DFIs to directly lend to municipalities. So the national government also continuously make an enabling environment for municipalities to access finance and also to realize other revenue from different sources. So there are a few initiatives that national government has done recently, especially from the National Treasury side. Firstly, the amendment of the Municipal Fiscal Powers and Function Act. The amendment was just done to accommodate or regulate the development charges. And the development charge is just another revenue source that municipalities could tap into to finance infrastructure. Recently also the framework for the PPPs was reviewed, and this was done to simplify the process for getting the PPPs in place. And we also have a specific grant, project preparation support, that goes specifically to cities to support them in unlocking bulk economic infrastructure, like your water, sanitation, and electricity. And recently, we also have a program, the Metro Trading Services, that needs to drive efficiencies in delivering core metro services. So as much as there are opportunities, but there are also some challenges that cities are facing, and I'll talk about few. Firstly, the climate change that is affecting everyone, and which causes of a lot of damage in infrastructure. And one of the example of the cities that we can use here is eThekwini. And the second challenge that we think is also key is politics in local government. A lot of coalition arrangements recently, they seem not to be working well. And I think one of the examples that you can mention is City of Johannesburg, where we see mayors not even staying long in the office. So the other biggest issue that municipalities are facing is that they are under financial distress. So the issue here is that how should national or provincial governments intervene effectively to help municipalities to get back on their feet without interfering with the role of the council or what the council should be doing. And lastly, the problem that I think mostly is for national governments is that as much as municipalities are able to raise their own revenue, they are still fully dependent or largely dependent on government transfers. So what do we think cities should do? I think it's very clear that government alone will not afford to fund cities. There's limited money available in the fiscus. So there's a big need to tap into the private sector funding. So firstly, what we think cities can do is to explore alternative funding mechanisms available, and especially the ones that are already allowed by legislation or policy, such as PPPs. Secondly, what we think cities can do is the financial discipline, and mainly this is to assist them to improve their creditworthiness. I mean, municipalities are allowed to borrow for infrastructure, and they have been doing that. So if their creditworthiness is improved, then they can also continue to go out to the market. I'll end it here, Sarah. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So just for to know, Kolisang, this was your joint input, or?
Yes, this was a joint input. I can give further inputs as the questions come along. I do see there's some questions regarding the intervention national government is making, and some things that you and Barbara touched on that I'd like to just quickly emphasize what Sandra had said. So over and above the reforms you've put in place, I think Sarah and Barbara, you touched on this, unlocking financing from within cities. It's a very core thing, and that's why we have the Metro Trading Services Program. We have identified that trading services within metros, specifically metros, have deteriorated and have impacted largely on their revenue base and have impacted on the ability to go out to the market and borrow. So there are large potential there for municipalities to use this Metro Trading Services reform, which we give as a grant, but we also want them to be accountable for turnaround strategies. We also have a number of national interventions. I think Barbara touched on this, that national started and they catalyzed down to municipalities. We have the budget facility for infrastructure, which is grant funding which municipalities apply to at the national level for large catalytic projects. But what we've seen, a number of municipalities don't really do that because they lack the capacity or the technical capacity to produce bankable projects or projects of that nature. So we have taken strides in strengthening the technical capacity. We do know that municipalities do need the technical capacity. And through the U20 and the G20, there are recommendations from the Sustainable Working Group to have larger capacity given to municipalities, especially in cities, in producing bankable projects, because from our perspective, we see this as the key barrier to unlocking financing within cities. It's the bankable projects element, because in South Africa, we do have a very large, diversified market that, as Sandra touched on, that municipalities can tap into. However, there is no project pipeline for bankable projects that financiers can back up. So that is the main issue is the creation of bankable projects at the city and municipal level. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kolisang. I think both of you have given a very good overview of what was showed before as financial architecture. We can really learn a lot from South Africa, and of course point on that South Africa has high capacity in all metros is obvious. We all know a lot of colleagues are active in South African cities, but probably intermediary and smaller ones have capacity gaps. It's clear. So I stop here because now my colleague from C40, Luis, he was aware of the questions coming up. So I'm happy you take over, and thank you so much for joining this.
No, thank you, Sarah. Can you hear me? Good. Okay. So thank you all. Thank you all. It's been great to join this webinar and listen to you all. Thank you to all speakers and to all the people who have shared questions. As you can tell, we have a short amount of time. I want to make the best use of it, and I will need the help of our speakers to actually do this. So Carlos and Bernardo, we're going to start with you with some of the questions that we've collected. And I would ask you to be as brief as possible, maybe like a 1 or 2 minute intervention. Carlos, if you're still with us and you're okay, I would like to ask the following question, although I don't, maybe I start with you, Bernardo, that you turned your camera. Thank you. Bernardo, so there were many questions interested in your experience. Thank you for sharing it. There particularly one, which is how local financing opportunities link to the level of decentralization by the national government or not. I guess the context of Brazil is one that was very interesting to hear for our audience, and they would like to understand that connection between decentralization and the challenges of financing from your perspective. Thank you, Bernardo.
Perfect, and thank you, Mr. Luis, by the question. So it depends, because as the financial, when you go international, when you try to get some international financing to the cities, in the Brazilian case, you have an established process, a bureaucracy with the federal government, with the Brazilian Congress. You know the steps that you need to make. It's a lot of bureaucracy, but I say this by a city, but I understand the precaution by the federal side. But in the other countries, it can change a little bit because of the procedures, the bureaucracy. For an example, in Latin America, a lot of countries have the same process to go international financing. At the local level, actually, it really depends because in the Brazilian case, each city has a different type of law inside the municipality. So I don't know in other countries here in Latin America, but in Brazil it can change from city to city. So it's really hard to take a general overview.
Thank you, Bernardo. Yes, definitely. Of course, every context is different, and I think that's a very important thing to highlight for our colleagues in different cities. Each national framework poses different challenges. Thank you, Bernardo, and thank you for sticking to the time. Carlos, it's great to see you. Thank you for the overview that you gave at the beginning. It was very, very interesting to hear about the whole process that the U20 has engaged over time on finance. Thank you for that. There's a very specific question I focused on, like the private side of things that we want to ask you, and again, thanking you for your time. Specifically, there's somebody interested in hearing from you about the PPPs and procurement mechanisms and the challenges and opportunities of raising private sector finance through these particular type of mechanisms. If you can share your views on it, it would be great. Thank you, Carlos.
Thank you. I already answered for a part in the chat, and I think that Barbara can really complement this. As I said, the issue with PPPs is the enabling environment and the capacity, meaning the ministries of finance that are providing, that are hosting the PPP units in general, because they have been supported, I mean, in the Global South by the World Bank to establish those units. They are reluctant to give somehow the keys of the PPP processes to the local governments because it's very complex. The contracts are very complex. Barbara told you during the presentation that you need a lot of different profile of experts to go along with these financing proceedings, and so you need to learn how to do PPPs. You need to follow up also and monitor what happens with the contract. It's very complex, and usually it always ends at the end by a judicial process, because you have interpretation over the contract, you have not a renegotiation on the conditions of the contract, because at the very beginning, when you have a lot of investment coming from the private sector, yes, the conditions for repayment, for paying for the service are key. But then when it turns like a process that is somehow automatized, you need to renew the contract between the public and the private sector. And it's not by going before the judge, but really to make sure that the trust in that underlines the contract is an evolutionary process where you can get more from the private sector that is going along with you. And of course, ministries of finance, they are reluctant. They don't have the means to really provide teams to support local governments, except for capital cities or economic hubs. But you have a lot of expertise, and I think that city-to-city partnerships can really support the transfer of knowledge on how you do the contract, the procurement, the follow-up process. But I guess Barbara can really comment on this.
Thank you, Carlos. Barbara, happy to hear your thoughts and your views on this before we close. It's great to see you, Barbara.
Thank you. Again, I think we have to step back. PPPs are emotional. A lot of people hate them. I think we have to start at the baseline. What is it do you want and who can do what? So the first best practice is you create a utility, an SPV, a separate legal unit that will deliver water, do renewable, whatever it is, but it's not on the balance sheet of the local government. You separate it, and on a technical level, you say, what is the role of each player? Now, PPPs aren't you can break them out in subcategories, right? Like you could say, I'm thinking Durban PPP with Viola. It's supposed to, as far as I know, be a good PPP. So what was the role? Viola, I think, brought $16 million, and they have a lot of high tech. So if you have, it's like a marriage, right? If your partner brings a lot to the table, it's going to be more stable. And so, you have to really have differentiated roles and see the comparative value. But you can also stay like Empresa Público de Medellín and keep 100% ownership and just have a concession agreement or, and within that, you can hire an ESCO, an energy service company that will really bring value, especially with climate smart solutions. For example, in Kenya, we were trying to do a deal with a county water service provider to bring in high energy, high efficiency water pumps. That is like Hollywood, right? Wouldn't that be cool? You reduce your energy, you have a renewable little grid there to do stuff. All of a sudden, you can do twice as much water, you get twice as much revenue, all of a sudden you're bankable. You can mobilize more finance. Of course, it's very technical because maybe the pipes need to be replaced. There's a lot of pieces, moving parts here. But I think we have to de-emotionalize a lot of the stuff and break it down in technical pieces. And Carlos, as you said, we need the experts to really put around that. And there we have to face the facts. We need more money and we need to pay market price for those experts, right? So that's also an emotional thing. But without that, I think we're in the valley of death. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Barbara. Thank you for your intervention. So mindful of time, I'm gonna start closing our webinar. Thank you so much to all the speakers and for everybody who has shared questions and share their views on the chat. I'm gonna take 2 to 3 minutes to synthesize some of the things that our speakers shared. So much information, so much richness. And of course, thank you to the mayor of Joburg for the opening remarks. And as I told Carlos, thank you for that overview of the U20, let's say, history on advocacy. So many things that you highlight that I think are going to be super useful for all the U20 cities looking forward this year to the communique. And thank you for the emphasis that you place, especially on those key elements and nuances on subnational development banks, just transition, nature-based solutions, as you mentioned, and of course the highlight that you made in a very particular year ahead of the updates of the NDCs at the end of the year. I think that's a very important element. Thank you for highlighting that. Barbara, of course, it was a pleasure to hear you. So much information and richness, and for sure, I think the challenge of transversing the valley of death is going to be, and it is one very, very, very complicated. But I think you made an amazing job in synthesizing the 3 ideas that you mentioned on fragmentation, on the challenges, of course, and the lack of finance and credit worthiness, and of course the point that you've highlighted and Carlos has highlighted so much in terms of building technical capacity, access to experts, to definitely create the environment that cities need to overcome this death valley and guarantee that the different elements are in place to tackle the different challenges. Thank you for your intervention. Mayor de Gabon, it was a pleasure to hear you as well. Thank you for for your very enthusiastic intervention. I was very, very moved by the different things that you shared, and amazed by the different work and the different governance and mechanisms that you're using to advocate for the challenges of Cameroonian cities. And especially interested, and I think a very, very particular work on the different mechanisms and councils that you and the different collaborations that you do throughout the United Cities and Councils of Cameroon to push and for advocate for the different things that you need. I think it's a great lesson for all the cities and how to collaborate at the national level, at the regional level, to succeed in some of these main and big advocacy asks and challenges that you face, of course. And I want to point to your final point on creating bridges and connections between cities, because I think it speaks perfectly to Barbara's point on the Valley of Death. It's particularly those type of bridges, those type of collaborations that I think we need to overcome precisely that valley, and thinking about cities in a way that they work together, they collaborate together, and for sure that will help tackle some of those challenges. And of course, Bernardo, I think it was very, very interesting to hear from you about the experience of Sao Paulo, coming from working on city diplomacy a few years ago in Bogota, and listening about the work and the strategies that you put forward to emphasize precisely the challenges of finance as part of your international relations strategy. I think speaks to the very important element of not only thinking about finance from a technical perspective, but thinking about it from a broader perspective, and about the role that diplomacy and advocacy is and has played for the last few years in setting an environment where cities can definitely push at the regional, at the national, and at the global level for the different challenges that they face. So thank you and congratulations to the city of Sao Paulo for the work that you're doing. And to Montreal, and to, of course, the national government of South Africa, thank you for sharing your views. Very important to hear both from the U20 and the 20 ahead of the work that we have ahead on the communique, and of course the summit. I think it sets the environment and the scenario for a very rich, full conversation among the two groups. And let me close just by highlighting, of course, I think what all of our speakers have said in terms of the different elements. And I think part of the message that we're putting forward is, of course, it's about building the capacities and strengthening the capacities that cities need through collaboration, through expertise, through advocating for it, especially from a pipeline perspective, from the development of bankable projects. But of course, we also need to think about the advocacy work and the support that we need, both from the national government at the national level, but especially also at the international level, in the context of the particular conversations and the dialogues that are happening this year in terms of the NCQG financing for development and the different things that will happen in the second semester. So strengthening national financial architectures, actively engaging with national governments, and building in-house financial expertise are all critical strategies for ensuring cities have the resources they need to drive sustainable development. So I just want to close and wrap this up, thanking again to all of our speakers for their valuable contributions, everybody who shared their views, and to all the participants for engaging in this important conversation. And we're looking forward for the next engagements as part of this U20 process that both Johannesburg and Tshwane are leading. So mindful of time, and thanking you for the extra 3, 4, 5 minutes. Sarah, over to you.
No, Luis, thank you very much for a great summary, very good discussions. I would have liked to know more. Just to say, from UCLG, discussions like this are crucial because that help our way. We try to open doors on financing for development on behalf of local government, and all these inputs are very helpful. And I hope that I want to thank the 200 participants, and we would like, of course, to know if it was useful for you as well, because we try that we believe that finance is a crucial capacity in municipalities, and we hope these webinars like this help you. And a big thank you to the team of Johannesburg for setting this up. It's not only the mayor, it is Sheila, Kate, and also Jan and Zaid. I know many of you in person for a long time, and always you do a work of excellency. So thank you very, very much. And this is to be continued, I would say.